Hey my tech friends, thanks for stopping by. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's continue to grow this channel. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Hey guys, welcome to another video. In today's video, we're going to take a look at an operating system that we're going to call a new flavor to an old friend. And of course, I'm talking about Ghost Spectre 11. Now, with sticking with tradition, we're going to look at the actual operating system from the installation process all the way through, since the installer is much different than it is in our base Windows 11 configuration. As we could see, booting off the ISO file gives us this screen right here with some options. Specifically, the options to restart the computer, the Start menu, Explorer++, and Windows Setup. I feel like if we didn't click on all of these options, we'd be really giving the developer an injustice. So since we know what restart the computer does, let's first start with the Start menu. So it looks like the Start menu inside of our Ghost Spectre setup gives us some options, or we could do a memory diagnostic tool or the registry editor. We could use 7-zip. There's a variety of check disk commands, the command prompt, CPU-Z, memory test, Windows recovery tool, and the Windows system restore. Now, it makes me wonder if maybe we could use this command prompt option on system boot with this disk in a base Windows 11 system. So that's something that we should check into after we do the installation. We should throw this ISO file into a Windows 11 system and see if this command prompt gives us any administrative access to that system without having to do any installation process. Okay, so next let's click on Explorer++ and see what that shows. Okay, so interestingly, we can see some of the operating system function. Now, the Xboot is going to be our disk or our ISO file more than likely. I would call that probably a PE configuration. We have our desktop, our documents, the downloads folder, and then some basic configuration. So yeah, I'm really interested to see if we could actually use this disk as a PE environment on an already pre-installed Windows 11 configuration. Okay, so since everything else is pretty much self-explanatory, we don't want to restart the computer. We've already looked at the Start menu and the Explorer++. Let's set up Windows. Let's do Compress OS, why not? Okay, so just like our X-Lite system, it appears that we have some noise or some busyness in the background, and you'll see here we have Ghost Spectre 2024 is listed. So let's click on Next. Okay, so the last time we did this installation, we did Compact with Defender. I think this time maybe we should do the SUPERLITE or the SUPERLITE remove Start menu, start all back. Let's do this let's do the SUPERLITE and then the Defender and do Next. Now, if you guys want to see the other versions of this operating system, just leave something in the comments down below, and we could reinstall this multiple times and check out every single version of this operating system. So we're just going to accept the terms and service, and next, do a custom. Where you have 32 gigs, we're going to see the notification that the drive needs to be 52 gigs or larger. Still going to click next. Let's do the installation of the operating system. I'll pick this video up as soon as we get to the next part if anything's different from here on out. Okay, so I went through the rest of the installation process, pretty much standard stuff. Didn't prompt for any additional information. Once it finished its install process, it rebooted the system, and now it's coming back up. So on boot, we do notice that we do have a command logic or command box here running in the background as Windows is starting. So it is doing something in the background. Now, I do have access to click on it to full screen it, but I don't see that it's doing anything. So it's got the command logic in there to not display the actual configuration changes it's making on the installation process, which is both good and bad, right? Because generally speaking, most people aren't going to know specifically what that system's doing when it's running that command. But at the same time, from a negative perspective, you know, you kind of want to know specifically what the operating system's doing during the installation process. You want to keep track that your customized OS is doing what it's supposed to be doing and not adding something vindictive. But we'll be able to tell that once we get this operating system up and start to run some scans on it. Okay guys, so this is the first real change in the installation process outside of like your command script and the actual boot configuration where we had the options for Explorer++ and the start menu, the PE environment. This is where we would set our password. Now at no point has this operating system required me to set up an online account or to use the online configuration for a Microsoft account for recovery to install or log into the actual system to set up the access. So it appears that the system gives you the first access as local, and then it'll probably allow you to set up the recovery account later if you really wanted to. Okay, so let's click on Finish. Okay, so that's the first view we have of our operating system. Let's log into this thing. So right now we're obviously zoomed into the screen, and I apologize for that, but I'll get the VM tools once, or installed rather, once we get into the actual operating system, so that way we can expand the screen to full size. So right off the bat, the start menu at least looks pretty standard. Oh, we're doing something. Maybe something's changing. Okay, so we're going to restart, and once we come back in, we'll take a look and see if anything changed. Okay, so we rebooted, and we're logging back into Windows now. I saved you guys the noise of the keyboard background. Alright, so it appears to have loaded. Let's take a look to see what we got. So start menu still looks pretty standard. We have the multiple desktop configuration, which is really just a rip of something that's existed in Linux for probably close to 20 years. Let's take a look at the actual drive space. Alright, so we're using 7.9 gigs of storage. So right off the bat, it's already bigger than the X-Lite system. But maybe it's because we have installed packages. Let's take a look. No, so we just have CPU ID and we have 7-zip installed, so really nothing additional as far as packages are concerned. So we're bigger than X-Lite with less stuff installed off the bat. Let's take a look at our Windows features to see if there's anything in there. So we don't have the older version of the .NET installed. Not necessarily a bad thing, but that is required for some functions if you need them to work. If the print and document services are installed, PowerShell, the later version of the SMB client configured. So really just standard stuff. Media features, we have the legacy media player installed. Alright, so let's take a look at the Windows firewall to see if there's anything funky in there. Keep in mind, as we're looking at this, the system is not connected to any network. So we're enabled, which is good. So far looks pretty standard. Now one of the interesting things is the fact that we have diag-track running here, which I don't know why they wouldn't have just trimmed that out of the operating system if they were actually going for a SUPERLITE or a smaller OS. So what diag-track actually does is it tracks the diagnostic tool configuration on your Windows system. So basically it allows remote access by application developers to watch the operating system to see specifically if there's errors when you run an application. So if you run like Chrome and it crashes, where it asks you whether or not you want to submit the data, the newer versions of Windows don't ask you that question anymore. Now automatically what they do is once they see that error that takes place, it sends the diagnostic data directly to Microsoft to let them know that something crashed on the operating system. So if you were doing something like, I don't know, watching an adult movie or something like that and it crashed, it would send the diagnostic data, including all the data from the adult movie, the URL, the links, what you're watching, the timestamp, and all that information to Microsoft. So that's why having this turned on and something that's supposed to be trimmed down, I don't get it. Why would you do that? So that's the first thing I would do, is uncheck this thing and don't allow the diagnostic data through the system. And then I would actually go into the settings configuration and disable that, so that way that didn't happen. With that said, it is a standard 11 process, so it's not out of the blue that it should be there or shouldn't be there. It's not something I would call vindictive. It's bizarre that you would go through all this configuration steps to slim down the operating system and not remove the tracking function of Windows. So we have email and accounts turned on, but we don't have a way during the installation process to set up a recovery account to log into Windows. You can't use a Microsoft account to log into the operating system. And since that's the case, I don't understand the point of having this turned on from the factory. Again, these aren't things that are not supposed to be here. They are built into Windows 11 functionality, but if you're going to go through the process of the configuration of the operating system, then I don't understand the point of leaving this stuff turned on. Because again, the point of the OS, right, is to slim down the size of the OS and to make the OS run faster. So if you killed off these two additional services, you would gain performance back of the operating system. And you would secure the operating system better because you wouldn't give remote access. And in either way, right, because we don't have, at that point, we're not allowing our remote accounts to log into the system, which you can't do anyway during the installation process. And then the diagnostic tracking stuff would be disabled. I just don't understand the point, but I digress. So MDNS is normal. We have the Microsoft Family features. Next bizarre thing we have in here is proximity sharing. Again, not sure why it's turned on. If we're going for a slimmed down operating system, maybe not have this turned on. What this does is gives you the ability to be close to somebody and use your Bluetooth on your laptop, or if you're on the same wireless Wi-Fi network, it gives you the ability to share files directly from one system to another with minimal configuration. But if the operating system's truly slimmed down, then what's the point of this? Because you could still use SMB shares, right? You could still configure a network share on your machine, set up a password to access it. But with this turned on, it gives you the ability to use Bluetooth or like close by system sharing, between system to system sharing on Windows 10. I think it's 1803 or better, or Windows 11, which I don't see the point in having that run if you're trying to slim down the operating system and increase performance. And that goes along too with our recommended troubleshooting and remote assistance, because they're just not necessary to have running in order, again, to slim down the operating system. Now keep in mind, this is not a slam to security from like a out-of-the-box perspective. Like if you have a vanilla Windows 11 system, all this crap is turned on anyway. But I don't understand when you talk about slimming down an operating system and increasing the performance by creating a smaller footprint, why you would leave services on that are not necessary for the operating system to run. And 99% of the time aren't necessary for any normal person to use the system on a daily basis. So the rest of the stuff in here so far looks pretty standard. I don't really see anything out of the blue or any out of the norm. I mean, we could argue and say, why is the Xbox account running? Or the Xbox game UI. And I guess obviously the last one, which is your account, which again, that's part of your account configuration to use a recovery account to log into the system. But during the installation process, that's not supported, so why is it running? So far, from what I see in this operating system, the Ghost Spectre 10 operating system is better configured out of the box versus Ghost Spectre 11. It just kind of looks like in this operating system that either somebody gave up or wasn't paying attention that day during the installation or configuration process, that they put the effort into actually configuring the operating system. The UI on the install and the configuration is beautiful and well done, but the operating system itself isn't as nice as the Windows 10 UI once you get into it. And then the configuration, even though they have all the services disabled, they didn't disable the configuration in the firewall for the corresponding firewall rule between that and the service on the operating system. So anyway, I digressed. Let's continue on in the operating system and continue on taking a look at things. I just don't understand the point of this. to me, when you develop something, you should put in the effort. If you're going to spend all that time fixing the operating system, you should put in the effort to actually secure the things you've removed. It doesn't make any sense to me to leave things open and accessible from the outside and then have the internal service configuration disabled or not available to access. So far, I will say that I do like the installation process of this operating system. However, once the operating system is running, I think the X-Lite V5 configuration that we looked at prior is a better Windows 11 system than this is at this point. But with that said, comparing the X-Lite operating system for Windows 10, which we haven't done the video on that, so I won't say anything about that yet, but it may be the flip of the configuration. So let's continue on. So let's close out of the firewall. We've already looked at the operating system. Let's jump into the actual C drive to see if there's any differences in here. We do have a Ghost toolbox, and we do have the toolbox on the desktop. We will take a look at that and run that here shortly. Let's take a look at the start menu to see what applications, if anything, customized in here, or anything that looks customized in here. So it appears that we really don't have any customizations of any kind in the applications, and actually we have a limitation of available applications in here. So far from what I can tell, it doesn't appear that we have a built-in browser of any kind in the operating system. So if you're going to do an install of this, make sure you download the browser first and put it somewhere, so that way you can actually access the internet once you do install the operating system, if this is your only system. So next part is I'm going to open up the registry so we can take a look at the installed applications under the local machine. So generally speaking, I would just type this out so you see me do it, but I know that the keyboard's noisy, so for things that I know that we could take a look at, I'll cut that part out. So with that said, we're at the HK local machine software, and this is where we're going to see the most generic list of system installed software versus user direct installed software. So in here, we do appear to have Google Chrome, at least the messaging services for the browser, and there's the Defender extension. So we do have the Defender extensions, which is probably necessary and likely part of the actual Microsoft Edge browser itself for the Defender portion when we install the operating system. But Chrome itself is not installed on this system. We do have 7-zip installed, but we did see that in the add remove programs. I don't see anything necessarily in addition here as far as configurations. So we have our services. So we have our edition, we have our revision, Windows 11. Let's take a look at the actual version, because according to the web, this is 23H2. Let's see if that's actually the case. Yep, so it is 23H2. All right, so the first step I'm going to do here is I'm going to install VM tools on the system, and we're going to reboot it. And then after that, I'm going to install Super Anti-Spyware on the system, and then we're going to run a system scan on it. And then after that, what we'll do is we'll get it a static IP address. We'll run a Nessus scan against the system and actually see if there's anything funky on it and how it performs. Okay, so we're back in the operating system now. We do have it expanded. A couple things I want to take a look at before we run the Super Anti-Spyware on the system is, first thing is I want to look at is the task manager to see if we specifically have anything set or scheduled to run on this system. So we're just going to right click on start. We're going to go to computer management. Task scheduler. Task scheduler library. I'm going to wait for this thing to load to see if there's anything listed. So I've been sitting here for a little while now, and I don't have anything loading. So I don't know if the task manager or the actual core operating system at this point is working correctly. It appears to be a little buggy on the actual checkup in the actual computer management area here, which makes me concerned that maybe we have some OS related issues. So we'll get some software installed on this thing and we will test that out. Likely what we'll do on this video anyway is we'll just end it when we do our Nessus scan. But we'll create a secondary video on this system and we'll do a software install and we'll do a test drive to see how the actual operating system performs with additional resources and software installed on it. I mean, could it function as a daily driver type thing? But based off of what I see right now, I don't know that it's 100% healthy. Actually, it appears like the only thing that actually works right now in the task scheduler is if we look at the Xbox gaming system itself. That's the only thing that seems to load correctly, which is, again, it seems like something's not right here in the configuration. So what I'd like to do here is now take also a look at our local users and groups and see what we got going on with users. So we have a guest account. We already know that based off of our XLite that if we want to do to limit some of our configuration or some of our infos, we have to get rid of the password never expires from our disabled accounts. Now, since you can have additional accounts in here and not just be local accounts for users, I just want to jump into groups and into administrators and see if there's anything listed, and you'll see that there's not. It's just administrator. Do the same thing for guests. It's not, just guest. Remote desktop users, we don't have anything in there. Remote management users, nothing. System managed accounts is a default account. Now we have the NT authority accounts, which is normal. Okay, so I jumped through our application log and our system log, and I decided I would just take a look at this real quick to see if there was anything out of the blue that was bizarre. And so far, everything seems normal. I mean, the configuration just looks like a vanilla configuration. I don't see anything out of the blue or out of the norm as far as our setup, any errors that are, you know, just adamant or pressing that show specifically that we have an operating system issue. The OS seems fine. With that said, the firewall configuration is a mess. It just looks like they configured the operating system, but then decided, you know what, we'll just leave the security side alone, and we'll just use the OS as our testbed. So as far as the configuration is concerned, the XLite system for Windows 11 seems much more polished than this particular operating system, just because the XLite is the whole OS. It's everything. They trimmed out the fat, but then they also secured the front end, so the front end doesn't listen for ports or allow things through the firewall to connect to applications that don't exist. So it's just a more polished operating system. But with that said, the Ghost Spectre, you know, it's almost there. You know, if they spend some more time and go through the configuration for the firewall settings to match the OS, then I would say it's just as close as the XLite from a security to application perspective. It just doesn't look as nicely polished. It's not as well developed as the XLite system, which is unfortunate because I really do think the Ghost Spectre 10 system was a beautifully configured operating system. It's just well done, whereas this kind of just falls short of the expectations that you would find in, you know, a homebrew or customized operating system. Okay, so I think at this point what we're going to do is we're going to install Super Anti-Spyware on the system and actually run a scan on the system to see if we do have any issues, if anything comes back as infected or anything like that. Okay, so we'll get Super Anti-Spyware installed here, and we'll just open this thing. Absolutely still hate the UI in Windows 11. That whole right-click thing, they changed the menu from a system that's existed for close to 30 years and added whatever that configuration in there was, but didn't add it as the secondary menu, which is just infuriating as far as an operating system. Now, I know that you could fix it. I know that there's registry keys that you could change to make it look or go back to the original version, but the fact that they did that is just so stupid. I don't know what they were thinking. Okay, so we got the Super Anti-Spyware installed now. And I mean, you know, again, Windows 11 is not processor and memory friendly. It's just something to keep in mind that no matter what flavor of operating system we've run Windows 11 from, whether it's Ghost or it's the X version or it's the Tiny 11, whatever it is, no matter what they do to the operating system, they can't seem to fix the overhead. It's just so heavy. And that might be something that we tackle in the future, is just to get a vanilla version of Windows 11 and see if we could trim the fat as far as the performance is concerned versus just trimming out the actual size. Because quite frankly, at this point, you could get a 1 terabyte hard drive for 75 bucks. I mean, or even cheaper. I know if you get a spinning disk, I've seen them as low as $25 for a 1 terabyte drive. So I don't think the storage issue is the issue. I really think that as far as the Windows 11 operating system is concerned, it's the CPU and memory utilization. So that might be something that we look into in the future to see if we could trim down the operating system to actually make it function on slower hardware versus a storage thing. Because I really don't think the storage constraint anymore is is a real issue. The vast majority of machines, at least for the past probably 10, 15 plus years, have the capability of running relatively cheap 1 terabyte drives. So I just don't see that as much of a point anymore. That's cool. I mean, right? So we run X Lite Windows and we got 5 gigs of storage that's used for the operating system. That's pretty awesome. But the fact that it still uses 2 gigs of memory and 50% of the CPU with 2 cores to actually function at idle, it's not really as light as they say. It's light from a storage perspective, but again, we have storage. A lot of the problems is CPU and memory, because those two things are still relatively expensive in comparison to storage. You can get 1 terabyte of hard drive space for $25, but I can't go buy 1 terabyte of memory for $25. All right, so let's scan this machine. So we're just going to do scan the computer. We're not going to check for updates because the system, again, isn't connected to the internet. And quite frankly, the update package, or this package itself, is updated from the other machine from today. So it should have the latest definitions as of today. Let's do a scan. No, we don't see that. Let's close active back. Let's scan the inside zip files. Let's do advanced scan settings. We want to scan inside zip files. We don't want to scan only known files. We don't want to ignore larger files. We don't want to ignore non-executables. We want to terminate the threats before we quarantine them. And we want to hit OK. And we want to do a complete scan. All right, so I will start this back up once this thing finishes. Okay, so we finished our scan. It took approximately 4 minutes to scan. There's 45,712 items that were scanned. Memory items were scanned were 973. Registry items scanned was 42,190. During the process, we were pretty much at 100% CPU utilization, but that's to be expected. We did run a full system scan, which did come back clean. So that's always a plus. So now I think what we're going to do is we're going to stop the Windows firewall completely, disabling it so we could launch our Nessus scan. And we're going to scan the operating system to see if there's anything else funky that we didn't see in this scan. So our expectations to beat on this operating system is the X Lite 11 system had 65 infos out of the box. After we went through our configuration a little bit on that system, we were able to trim the majority of the infos down to about 15. With that said, out of the box, Windows 11 should get 39 infos and 1 medium for the SMB signing. Now, I assume we'll still see the SMB signing issue in this operating system because of the lack of security configuration in the firewall. We'll likely see that anyway. And I also have a feeling we're going to see the additional 40. I don't know if we'll see all 65, if we'll see more mediums or more criticals, but stay tuned and we'll figure that out. Okay guys, so while we have our scan running on our Ghost Spectre 11 system, I figured we could touch base on some of our other Windows 11 security configuration scans that we've run. Specifically, we have our X Lite 11 system, which is from the 8th, which if we click on this, we'll see the 58 infos that we had. Now that's down from, I think, 65 originally. We were able to trim some of those things out with our reconfiguration, but of the 58, we only really have 21 vulnerabilities on the actual system, and the 21 vulnerabilities are really just configuration changes or suggestions, so there's really nothing on the Windows X Lite 11 system. Again, we're going to have a heightened version of security incidents on the X11 system because we're missing parts of the OS. And the Nessus scan doesn't take into consideration that there's parts of the OS missing. It just sees those as security flaws because we're missing patches or we're missing configuration to parts of the OS that don't exist in the X Lite version. And so you can't really take this as the full-on security measurement of it because we don't find any security-related issues. So we don't see anything critical or anything that's error-related. We just see infos for configuration because there are parts of the OS that are just strict. They're just not there. So that's what the X Lite 11 system. Now, the Tiny 11 system was interesting because on the Tiny 11 system, when we did our actual scan, we came back with 40 and 1, which is exactly the same as what we would see on a Windows 11 full-blown, full operating system. And the reason why that's interesting is Tiny 11's well, it's just that it's tiny. But Tiny 11 is a beta product, and that's something to keep in mind with them, is that the developer has made it abundantly clear that Tiny 11 is not to be used as an internet-facing configuration. However, it's the most configured system like the vanilla version. So in other words, it has all of the flaws and all of the benefits of the full-blown operating system with stuff trimmed out. The thing is the stuff that's trimmed out has been trimmed out well enough that the operating system doesn't know that it's missing, so it doesn't report back as an issue. And that's the difference between what we see here and what we see in, say, the X-Lite 11 version. Is the X-Lite 11 version just strictly something was deleted from the registry, something else is pointing to that location, doesn't know that it's gone, and when the scanner runs, it says, oh, this exists, but where is this? You know, this could be configured better for that operating system to be more secure. Whereas on our tiny system, it says, look at this, and then it says, well, this exists, but it doesn't have a pointer to this, and that pointer to this doesn't exist because there's nothing at that secondary point. So the development of the Tiny 11 system, should it actually ever go to alpha or actually production, is very promising, because it would really bridge that gap where we would see a full-blown secure operating system in Windows 11 versus what we see currently with the X-Lite system or the Ghost system, I'm sure, once we get our scan finished. Or even the vanilla version, right? Because we are basically a one-to-one copy at that point, where the operating system's trimmed fat is all trimmed to the point where the operating system has no idea that that trimmed fat even existed. Whereas in the X-Lite, it knows that it existed, but doesn't know why it doesn't have a configuration in it anymore. Again, not necessarily a security concern, but when we look at these actual scans, that's why we get these huge differences in the numbers. It's based off of what we're actually stripping out of the operating system when we run the scan, and what the scan sees as stripped or not configured. So that's our Tiny 11 system. Now if we go into our AME 10 system, which I don't know that that video ever released. I think that video was actually pulled by YouTube. Now I've had a couple videos at this point that have been yanked by YouTube, so you know, if these videos disappear, if it's not something that I don't repost, then chances are YouTube's algorithm just yanked the video. And I can't really get a straight answer as to why these videos were yanked in the first place, so I have no clue what to say as to why one gets yanked and another one doesn't, unless maybe the manufacturer for AME 10 complained. I don't know, because that system did not do well. So with that said, you know, if we look at the Windows 11 supported operating system, so our no firewall Windows 11 supported, it's the 40 infos. And the reason why is because we would have had 39 infos in one medium, but we patched that system with the registry fix. So at this point, we just kind of have to sit and wait. And once we get the Ghost 11 system is finished scanning, we should at that point be able to pull up our results and take a look to see specifically what the issues are. Okay, team, well, here's the results here for our Ghost Spectre system version Windows 11. I think it's called Momentum or Moment 5. I'm guessing that's just revision 5. It's the 23H2 system. At any rate, this is the result. We get 62 infos in one medium. I've already gone through the 62 infos, and I think that's something that maybe we'll do another video on to trim that operating system down and see if we could fix some of these infos. A lot of the info configuration is due to missing registry configuration and Windows updates. So the system is missing some configuration updates for the SMB protocol for security. It's also missing the SMB signing, and it's missing the server LAN configuration, or LAN-man server configuration for the signing for the actual infrastructure. It's also got a bunch of infos for the Windows firewall, allowing ports through that don't have anything listening on the back end, which we've already seen in the operating system. So we could probably trim this down to even less than we saw on our X-Lite system. But with that said, I gotta be honest, I don't know that I like this operating system. You know, it does have the functionality and the features that I would say the X-Lite system also contains, but the X-Lite system is a lot smoother. The X-Lite system feels a lot more snappy. The X-Lite system seems to be more like polished. The limitations that we found in the firewall configuration didn't exist on the X-Lite system. The X-Lite system is just a well-developed version of Windows 11. this is kind of halfway there. It just doesn't feel finished. It feels like it should still be in like a alpha or a beta version where the configuration is just not quite there yet. Which I don't know about to you guys, but to me it's disappointing because the Windows 10 version I thought was phenomenal. And I still think the Windows 10 version is phenomenal. But this Windows 11 version just doesn't feel as well developed. So I mean, it's not just the configuration of the firewall, but then the computer management doesn't work correctly. The Ghost toolbox, I've run this a couple times now. It just crashes. It doesn't actually start and run. It just doesn't feel well made. The Windows 10 version worked phenomenally, flawlessly, and I really did enjoy that operating system and the testing and the troubleshooting and the checking it out. I know it was the older version of than 22H2. I think it was 21H2. I think it might have been 20H2. I can't remember off the top of my head. But that particular operating system just felt well developed, well designed. This doesn't feel finished. We could run through a series of tests on it, check it out, see if we could fix some of the security of the info stuff and try to trim some of the fat of the firewall ourselves. But in reality, if you have a choice between the Ghost Spectre version 11 and the X-Lite 11, I would choose the X-Lite 11. I don't think I would bother with this until they fix the bugs in the operating system from the package they've created. Now, with that said, I am looking forward to using the actual ISO file to see if we could get into a Windows 11 system through the PE, because that would be interesting, or at least something that you could add to your arsenal of toolkit as an IT person. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if there's anything that I missed. Let me know if you use this operating system, how it functions for a daily driver. And if you guys have any suggestions for any new operating systems out there that you want me to check out, add a comment, let me know, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.